Before I get into my story, here's a little overview. So I think the black-eyed children are classified as an urban legend, but it's a little unique than most of them because the person, like the first account was, I believe, in the 90s, and the person is known. His name is Brian Bethel, and he's from Abilene, Texas. One day he was in his car writing out a check to pay some bills, and these two children came up to his car, and they had like pale skin, black eyes, and they were asking for a ride to get into his car because they were lost or they needed a ride home or something. So yeah, and it really spooked him. He felt like dread when he was talking to them and very afraid. But yeah, so
one of the things that is very important to know is the black-eyed children very commonly come knocking at your door, and they need to be invited in. So they're like vampires almost, which is weird because they want to be invited in, but they're very persistent.
Mm-hmm. They claim that they need help. They want to call a parent or, something along those lines to try to get you to let them in their house or in your house.
That's a common one, right? Like,
or
I need
vehicle.
To use a phone. I need to use a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, you have kids ringing your doorbell all the time on Halloween night.
I specifically found a Halloween one.
Oh, looky there.
All right, so this is from Sarah Beth 11. I don't believe in the paranormal, ghosts, demons, aliens, whatever. However, I did have an event happen to me this Halloween I have to admit has me scratching my head. So it had been a slow trick-or-treat night in our neighborhood, which is pretty odd in itself. We usually have kids from different areas dropped off in ours and have a constant parade at our door. That night, I'd say we had no more than 8 or 10 groups of kids come by the entire night. It was about 9:30 p.m., and my husband and I were sitting in our family room watching some of those ghost shows based on supposedly true events. Like I said, I don't believe in that stuff, but I do like a good ghost story now and then, and it was Halloween and all. We hadn't had any activity at the door in over half an hour, and it was getting late, so we decided to turn the porch light off and let our bulldog Chloe out of her crate. Which is funny.
Your mom has a bulldog named Chloe.
Is she Sarah Beth 11?
Put it. Come forward.
We only put her in her crate because we were afraid she'd try to get out and play with all the kids, and I didn't want to have to chase after her down the street. Also, we didn't want her to scare any of the kids because she would look a little intimidating to the younger kids. And yeah, bulldogs be looking funky. Mm-hmm. So I turned the outside light off, let Chloe out, and she followed me back to the couch and laid down at my feet. It was getting close to 10 p.m. when my husband decided he'd had enough fun for the night and was going upstairs to take a shower and get ready for bed. After all, it was Thursday and he still had to get up early the next day. My teenage son was out with his friends at a local haunted house and wasn't expected back for another hour or so that left me alone on the couch with Chloe. Mm-hmm.
It sounds so much like your mom.
That's kind of what I imagined. It wasn't long after I heard the upstairs water for the shower turn on when there came a light knock, knock, knock at the front door. My initial reaction was, what the hell, really? It's almost 10, go home. But soon an uneasy feeling came over me. Why the knock? Our doorbell glows in the dark, and without the porch light it would be extra obvious to anyone there. I paused. I couldn't really just ignore it. Our front door has a big beveled glass panel, and anybody right at the door could see in enough to see someone was in the family room watching TV. It would be pretty rude for me to just sit there and not answer it. Knock, knock, knock. Again from the door. I glanced down at Chloe, and she was gone. My gaze followed her usual path to the front door, expecting her to be there. Nothing. She wasn't there. I stood up to look around the room better and found her crouching by the back door. This was totally out of character for her, and I have to say heightened my anxiety. "Chloe, crate," I said. She just turned back to look at me like, "Hell no, lady, I ain't moving." I yelled up to my husband, but if he was already in the shower, I knew there was no chance of him hearing me. Knock, knock, knock. About that time, a car drove down our street and cast just enough light on the door to where I could see the silhouettes of 2 small children through the glass. I instantly felt relief. It was just some kids, probably a couple of my neighbors on their way back home that wanted to stop by and show me their costume or something. I headed to the door and looked back to make sure Chloe wasn't going to follow. She just sat there. So already the dog knows something is up. I turned on the porch light when I got to the door, and sure enough, I could see through the glass that it was a couple of pretty small kids. A little late for such young ones, I thought, and I began to wonder about what kind of parents would let their kids run the streets that late at night. I only opened the door enough to where I could block Chloe if she tried to escape, which was only about 2 feet. What struck me immediately as odd was the kids weren't wearing any costumes. They were in normal street clothes. Also, no customary trick-or-treat either. I began to feel very uneasy again. It was a girl and a boy. The girl to my left was older, I'd say about 11 or 12. I could tell she was blonde, but I couldn't make out any distinct features as our lights are from high above and on columns at the front of the porch, so most of the light was coming from behind them. I had not opened the door wide enough for any light from inside to hit them directly. The boy was younger and about a foot shorter, I'd say 8 or 9, and looked to have light brown hair. The girl very politely spoke up, "Ma'am, can we please come inside and use your phone to call our mom?" As she spoke, something in the pit of my stomach was telling me something was wrong. "Hun, don't you have a phone of your own you can call your mom on?" I asked. This was when things got really weird. Both kids turned to look at one another like they were going to say something to one another, but neither ever spoke. They both turned back to me, and the girl said, "Ma'am, my cell phone battery doesn't have any charge left in it. Can we please come inside and call our mother? We're alone out here, and my brother is scared." I have to admit, there were 2 competing feelings going on inside me. The first, that of a mother's heart that wanted to help these 2 small children get to their mom. The other, a sinking fear in my gut that was keeping the other feeling at bay. It was then I noticed that during the short conversation, I'd already opened the door a few extra inches, which I was completely unaware of. I stopped. "Honey, why don't you give me your mother's number and I can call her myself?" Another pause, and they again looked at one another. After a short moment, they turned back to me, and the girl said, "Ma'am, my little brother has to use your bathroom. Can we please come inside while you call our mom?"
So the story has changed. You went in this house.
If anything, these kids, like the black-eyed children story, the kids are persistent.
Yeah.
And with the last statement, the little girl moved closer toward the door like she was just going to walk in. As she did, she stepped into the light coming from inside the house, and I got my first real good look at her. Solid, jet black eyes. That's all I could see. That motherly instinct was gone and replaced by terror. I don't think I've ever felt in my life. I could feel every hair on my arms and back of my neck standing at attention. I closed the door to where just my face was able to stick out. The little girl stopped. I would have closed the door all the way. The little girl stopped and again pleaded, "Please, ma'am, we're really scared and alone out here. We have to come inside. Please help us." Then, like on cue, both kids began to whimper and cry.
Whimper and cry.
Really laying on the guilt. They're trying hard to get in that house.
Yeah.
That's when the fear took over, and I shut and locked the door. "I'll call your mom if you give me the number," I shouted through the door, "but I'm not letting you in my house." I could still see them stand there on the porch, just staring at me through the beveled glass pane. Part of me wanted to run upstairs to my husband, but the bigger part didn't want to lose track of where they were. That would have freaked me out even more, not knowing where they were. After what seemed like forever, but probably only a few seconds, I decided I'd call my neighbor that lived across the street. As I did, I walked to the door to get a better look to see where they went, still not calling my neighbor. If you get close enough to the glass, you can see out enough to make out people's shape, but you can't see much detail. Of course, standing that close to the door would make you pretty obvious to anyone outside looking in. From the door, I could see that the kids were still standing under the street lamp nearest my house, staring at me. As I lifted the phone to my ear after calling, only then did the kids start walking down our street. I met my neighbor out under the lamp once he was out there, but the kids were nowhere to be seen. Like I said, I don't believe in any of this stuff and had never even heard about black-eyed kids before talking to my friend. What I have to think, is these kids were just out yanking people's chains on Halloween night. But I will say this for them. They were good, really good at it. They scared the S out of me and my dog.
I don't know if they were fake. they did pretty good.
Like the main thing would be like the dog acting off. Like since the dog is acting different, then I'd feel scared too.
Yeah. What the dog doing?
But I'd also feel like so guilty, like being scared of children that are trying to get help.
Yeah. Can I call my mommy? No, you can't, sweetheart. We're gonna. You got your own phone, huh? turns and looks at her brother without saying anything. Turns back. My brother has to pee. Is that what he told you? I didn't hear him say that.